Welcome into the Thunder basketball universe. We're recording this on December 30th. It is Monday. It's been a little bit of a minute since we podcasted, but for good reason. This Thunder team has been on a very travel-heavy schedule throughout the month of December. Just 3 home games in a span of about 5 weeks, and we finally started another homestand. The only homestand that we've really had so far this season.
Yeah. I think the team has actually only had 3 stretches all year where they've had more than 1 home game at a time. So that's crazy. And the last one was in the middle of November. And to your point, Paris, the last time that we talked to you all was when we had AJ Mitchell here before the NBA Cup.
I know.
And the reason we haven't talked to you since is we haven't been home since, really, except for Christmas. We were here for basically 48 hours right around Christmas, and then we took off on Christmas Day to go back and play a couple Eastern Conference teams. So we are finally getting a chance to sit down and maybe look back at 2024 here a little bit.
Yeah, so over this last stretch, Thunder's been traveling, Christmasing, and most importantly, winning a lot of basketball games. The Thunder currently on an 11-game winning streak. That is the current longest active streak in the NBA. This group has been playing so strong. So we're going to use this episode right here. It's going to be our last podcast of 2024. And we're going to go back over the first part of this season, the 2024 section of this 24-25 season. And we're going to give you a stat of the year so far. We're going to give you a quote, you can Shai that again. We're going to give you a thing that made us look so far this season, and a bless your timeline. So it's kind of a natural line of demarcation that allows us to kind of take a step back and look over the year so far.
Yeah, I love it. And there's so much to be excited about. I mean, this winning streak that the Thunder is on is the second longest in OKC history. 12 is the longest, so the Thunder has an opportunity to match that on New Year's Eve, that traditional game that happens here at Paycom Center every year. So what a special way to be sort of ringing in the new year.
Yeah, before we zoom all the way out, I do want to point out the Thunder's win last night in this building against the Memphis Grizzlies, because this just showed the character of this team, right? And I think it's worth talking about. The Thunder were on the second night of a back-to-back, a road home back-to-back. They had just played in Charlotte the night before. They won that game, obviously. Then you come into Paycom Center, you welcome in the number 2 team in the Western Conference, and the Thunder, outside of the first 3 minutes of that game where they didn't score and Memphis went on a 9-0 run, outside of that game, outside of that stretch, it was all OKC. And the Thunder put up 130 points in that game and held Memphis, the number 1 scoring team in the NBA, to just 106 points.
Yeah, held them after that first 3-minute stretch to under 100 points the rest of the way, and outscored them by, I think, about 33 the rest of the way. And so just a dominating performance, 7 different guys in double figures, 35 assists in the game, and just another amazing defensive night where you force 21 turnovers and hold a team to under 40% shooting that's used to shooting well above that, standard deviations level above that.
a lot to pull away from that game. So I just wanted to bring that up because they also had 61 bench points in that game. I mean, truly, it was just a really great testament to how this group is playing right now, really leaning into adversity. I mean, the Thunder's obviously not fully healthy. I mean, the Grizzlies weren't fully healthy either, but this group making zero excuses and absolutely just getting the job done, playing so well on both ends of the floor, which gives us a lot to talk about so far this season. So let's get into our stat of the year so far. Nick, I will let you go first here. What's your stat?
23.1.
Assists per game.
Close. It might be. But what I'm actually, I think the assists are a little bit higher than that. This is points off turnovers per game for the Thunder. And to me, this has really been the story of the season for OKC. This Thunder squad has far and away the number 1 defense in the NBA. They've had it basically since the first days of the season when, you go out to Chicago, to Denver and then Chicago, you take care of business those 2 games and you just dominate in terms of the defense there. And so to be able to do that and sustain it over this course of time, and it's really been on the back of having a swarming, physical, aggressive defense that has forced turnovers. That's not been the goal, but that has been the byproduct of the effort and the intensity level that this team's played with.
Could I take this a step further?
Absolutely.
We had the same brain here putting this on the rundown.
No way.
Mine's very similar, very similar. So the numbers are 365 and 364.
Okay, are those the Thunder's steals on the season and the Thunder's turnovers that they have on the season?
Precisely.
Nice.
This is what gets me. To your point, the Thunder's not out to get these numbers, right?
Yeah.
They lead the league in steals per game, and they lead the league in fewest turnovers committed per game. They're the only team in the league that has more steals than turnovers. That means they are getting the ball from the other team more than they are giving it up. So like the Boston Celtics, for example, I had this pulled up because I was like, surely there's another team that might be somewhat close. In terms of turnovers, the Boston Celtics have the second fewest turnovers behind the Thunder. They have 381 turnovers so far this season. How many steals do you think they have? Like,
I'm going to guess like 280, 290.
239.
Wow. Okay. Even fewer.
Yeah. So like the margins are massive. And then you think, okay, the Thunder have 365 steals. Who's second in the league in steals per game? That's the Atlanta Hawks. They have 343 steals. How many turnovers do you think they have?
Oh, goodness. Probably 450.
540.
540.
So I want to put this into context how difficult this is for the Thunder.
I mean, we're talking most teams have a negative 100
negative
differential.
yes
Yeah.
And the Thunder, it is just one,
Yeah.
but it is positive. And they're the only team in the NBA that's done that, and that has been a positive number for the majority of the season, if not the whole season.
And in fact, actually, that number was much bigger over the first 2 months of the season.
Yeah.
The last couple weeks, actually, the Thunder's turned it over a little bit more as teams have really been hyper aggressive in trying to trap them late in these games when the Thunder's been up by 20 plus points. But your assertion here is a great one because it's a huge indicator that the Thunder is doing something that is a vital part of their mission, which is frankly to get more shots than the opponent. And when you have more steals than you do turnovers, that's not even accounting for the other turnovers that the opponents are making where the ball is just going out of bounds,
right?
Or they're traveling, or it's a offensive foul. These are straight up steals.
Yeah.
These are live ball turnovers where the Thunder's going the other way with it. So if you just put that into context, the sheer number of shots that the Thunder is getting more than the opposing team is remarkable. And the Thunder this year has one of the best differentials in terms of field goal attempts in the league.
And
plus
it's
7 per game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's that field goal differential, to your point, that has allowed OKC to maintain such a steady flow of offense, such a steady offensive rating this season, despite the fact that you look at their 3-point numbers throughout the season, it has been very up and down for OKC. And yet they're able to win games. They're able to keep the scoreboard moving because they just take the ball away from the other team. And not only that, to your point, this is just steals. The Thunder also league leaders in charges per game, also league leaders in just straight up points off turnovers, period. And they're also getting stops. They're also just not allowing the other team
lowest field
to
goal
make
percentage
a shot
too. Yeah.
So there's just so many different elements that go into how OKC is able to be successful. It's the defense to offense, but also the offense through the defense. It's all very symbiotic.
Yeah, I mean, Thunder has one of the best net ratings in the league in team history. They're up above plus 12 basically in net rating. The defensive rating is right around 103, which is like ridiculous
that is absurd
to think about. I mean, most teams are in the 110s. And so for the Thunder to be at 103 is just remarkable.
And this is what we talked about in a few podcasts, I think, and definitely at the early part of the season, maybe even preseason, when we talked about the Thunder and their array of individual defenders, right? Guys like Lou Dort, guys like Cason Wallace, guys like Alex Caruso, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who led the league in steals last season. You've got Jalen Williams and his 7'2" wingspan and high IQ. Chet Holmgren before he got injured, just an absolute menace around the rim. Even Isaiah Hartenstein holding his own down there. And the compounding nature of those individual defenders and how absolutely exhausting it must be to try to score the basketball against this team compounds minute over minute. And by the time you get to minute number 45, 46, you're like, I'm out of options.
Yeah, imagine you're kind of like the second best scorer on a team.
Right.
And you're playing some second unit minutes, and one of the top line guys gets the ball over to you, and you're like, great, I can play against this closeout. There's going to be a weak defender coming at me, and then that defender is Alex Caruso, a 2-time all defensive team player,
or just long arms and massive hands, just like in your face, blocking your view.
Yeah, or that defender is Cason Wallace, who is an absolute menace. he
just ripped the ball away from somebody in the Memphis game the other night.
Yeah.
Literally,
Poor John
Kennard or John
Conchar.
Conchar. That's who it was.
Ripped it straight out of his hands. We've seen that a number of times this season where he and Lou and some of these guys are just straight up wrestling the ball away while somebody's driving. It just doesn't happen in the NBA. Basically, it feels like an unofficial rule that like if a weak ball handler puts the ball on the ground, it's Thunder ball. It just has to be. That's the rule.
Yep. Exactly. Yep. And then on the other side of the ball, the Thunder's ability to not give up possessions and allow easy buckets for the other team. Again, that's not something they're emphasizing. The low turnovers, the holding onto the ball and not allowing for any steals. That's not something they're emphasizing. What they are emphasizing is spacing, great movement, ball movement, because we've seen a lot of snappy ball movement from the Thunder recently, and getting the ball to the open hand, finding the good shot, getting downhill, all of that. They really just simplify it as much as possible to make the decision-making easy, and the mistakes end up being pretty low.
Yeah, and so that's just allowing for the Thunder to play good, high-quality basketball on both ends of the floor, and when ultimately defense is going to help raise the floor of your game no matter what. Now, as we saw last night against Memphis, when shots start falling, your ceiling can go through, all the way up to the heavens.
Yep.
But if you've got that floor that's elevated for yourself because you're just not allowing easy runouts, you're not allowing, once again, the Thunder allows the fewest points in the paint in the NBA this season. And so when you're just not giving up the easy stuff, it really helps you be able to stay in games, and it helps you be able to maintain leads. One thing that we're talking about here, the Thunder just has not coughed up leads. Their record in games when they've led at halftime, 19-1.
Yeah.
They're 23-1 when leading after 3 quarters. It's just they are holding on to these leads.
And the fact that it is so predicated on their ability to defend is incredibly sustainable through not just 48 minutes, but through an entire season. And that's something that'll show up whether or not your shot is falling. So incredible stuff from the Thunder through the first 30 games of this season. So cool to see. All right, let's get into our quotes that we've liked so far this season. I'm going to go first on this one.
Okay, do it.
Is that okay?
Yeah, you can Shay that whenever you want to, Paris.
I'm going to Shay that. And as a matter of fact, this is from our good friend Shai Alexander, the namesake of this segment. He said, "It doesn't feel like we have a bench, to be honest. We look at it like we have 12 to 14 guys every night that can affect and change a game." This happened, I asked this question after, I believe, the Indiana game. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the Thunder, it was, they'd been on the road for a long time. It's just part of this road-heavy month of December, right? It was a start of a Indiana-Charlotte trip.
Which started on Christmas Day, by the way. You come home for one game, and then you have to fly out at 4 p.m. on Christmas Day. All these guys, Shai's got a young child. Isaiah Hartenstein's got a young child. Kenrich has got 2 kids. It's it's a tough day.
Everybody's just it's really tough to pull yourself away from that and then get your mind right to go play some basketball. And the Thunder, to their credit, put together a really solid game. They were playing uphill for a lot of that game, but it was the second unit of that game that really impacted, brought a lot of energy, brought a lot of punch. And I asked Shai post-game because also the game before that against the Wizards, the second unit played a massive role in the Thunder's ability to walk away with the win. Again, another uphill battle. And you turn around, you play the Pacers, who were really rolling. I think they were on a 5-game winning streak or something like that. They were feeling themselves. And the Thunder walk away with the win. And so I asked Shai, I was like, how valuable has your second unit been over, the course of this season? And this was his quote. "It doesn't feel like we have a bench. It just feels like we have guys who can play with anybody. And we're ready to play with any combination of players out there on the floor." And that's a credit to Coach Dagnall and his ability to build up that muscle of adaptability in these guys. So they're not just set on playing these are my 5 guys that I play with at the start of the game, and these are my 5 guys that I play with when I close. It's nope, we've got a bunch of talented players on this roster, and whatever the game requires, that's the guys we're going to put in the game.
And that's been a hallmark of what the Thunder has done really over the last 5 years. With Dagnall here as a coach and, kind of the team and organization having an opportunity to rethink some of the things that they had done in the past and to really lean into this idea of adaptability and intentional discomfort. That's what's helped breed this ability for anybody that steps on the floor to impact things. And it kind of ties back to what we were talking about with the turnovers and the steals and all of that is, that's happening even with one of the best defenders in the entire NBA not on the floor.
Yeah.
And this Thunder team has now played 10 different starting lineups this season. That's one of the most in the NBA. And the ability to adapt to whatever is happening out there on the floor and still be effective, for the system to still have integrity. I mean, that was something that in Charlotte, Mark Daignault pointed to. And if I can tap into my quote here.
Please.
A quote from Mark that I really connected to was, "We want to be a team that's in character. We want to play to our strengths and compete together as a team. We want our players to get to that level every single night and be consistent regardless of the circumstances." That dovetails perfectly with what you're talking about here, which is regardless of who is in the game, the products should look the same. And all season long, that's basically what's happened. The Thunder has led by 20 now in 18 games this season. They've won every single one of those games. Just because, the second unit has come in, or maybe some guys that haven't gotten very many minutes at all, some rookies and back into the rotation guys are in these fourth quarters, those leads aren't like falling apart the way that you see they sometimes do, where teams are then scrambling to try to win the game in the last 2 minutes when they had a 20-point lead and suddenly it's gone because of a fourth quarter run. That's not happening to the Thunder because there's a consistently high standard for everyone who comes in. And there's an understanding of what this team wants to get to on every possession, regardless of which 5 guys are on the floor.
Right. It's an identity that they're playing to, and it's not dependent solely on the personnel out there on the floor. That's the point of all of this. And I think another big element is the fact that the Thunder's able to do this also speaks to the continuity that this group has, which is really impressive for a relatively young team, youngest team in the NBA, to have this level of continuity. You think of guys like Lou, think of guys like Shai, J-Dub. These guys have played together for a long time. And you got a guy like Cason Wallace, who played all 82 games last season. He's got a lot of experience playing with these guys. You got a guy like Isaiah Joe, who's been here for a couple of years. Kenrich Williams. I mean, these guys have played together for a very, very long time now. And they have this experience. They know each other. They know the system. And so it's really easy, to just slot these guys in and out. And then you add a new player like AJ Mitchell. You add a new guy like Alex Caruso. And it's really easy for these guys to just fit into the system, because the system is designed for this level of adaptability, and these guys are just so used to playing with one another.
And it goes back to the roster construction as well. I mean, this is a huge credit to Sam Presti and the Thunder front office, which is they've brought in players who are multi-tool players. If you think baseball, like a 5-tool player, somebody that can, hit, run, field, throw, catch, all those things. And, this is a team that has guys who can shoot, pass, dribble, make decisions on the fly, and most importantly, defend. I dare you to name the weakest defender on the Thunder in the Thunder rotation.
Good luck.
A guy like AJ Mitchell is picking up full court, 94 feet, and he's a rookie.
And he's had 4 steal games in his career already.
He's holding up great. Guys like Isaiah Joe are feisty as can be. He's one of the league leaders in charges per game. This is a guy, there's no turnstiles on this team, and there's nobody that's being hunted when they're out there on the floor. If they are, it's not going very well.
Exactly. They're handling it very well. And it's just like, good luck, because these guys are competitive and they're scrappy. When I think of Isaiah Joe and I think of AJ Mitchell, I think of guys like, oof, I do not want to go up against those guys because they're going to make my life pretty difficult.
And I only mention those two because technically they are the lightest and maybe on the smaller side of the guys that are on the roster. But by no means are they like pushovers defensively in any way, shape, or form. They are crucial cogs in upholding the Thunder's defensive system that has maintained great integrity throughout the season, even with guys going in and out of the lineup. Like I mentioned, Chet Holmgren. I mean, we had stretches this year where Jalen Williams, J-Dub, was playing center. Now we finally got J. Will back and playing some center too. And the defense has stayed pretty much consistent throughout the entirety of this 31 games in the season so far.
Oh, it's been so cool to see. And watching a guy specifically like AJ Mitchell get integrated so well into the system and then see him grow from game to game. I mean, he had an awesome game last night against the Grizzlies where he had 17 points. That's a season high. But the night before that in Charlotte, he gets his first career start and he plays a season high in minutes. He played 31 minutes in that game and then turned around and had another great night against the Grizzlies. So really cool stuff to see so far from AJ Mitchell and this Thunder group. Let's get into what made us look so far.
Right. So
you go first.
Yeah, what's really popped to me is this brand new addition that the Thunder has made this year in Isaiah Hartenstein.
Okay.
This is a style of player that the Thunder has not had over the last few years. And something that Mark Daigneault said just a couple nights ago, I think maybe last night, is we brought Isaiah Hartenstein in not as this finished product that's going to help just us do these few things on the floor, but as a 26-year-old who has the opportunity to grow and develop over the course of time to help enhance our system, to learn our system and to grow within that and to expand his own skill set. And one of the things that we're seeing early on is the way that he has really incorporated not just with the rebounding and the physical defense down low, but the offense. And I want to deliver you a couple things that he's doing at a really high level right now. One is screening. And
the screen assists are insane.
The screen assists are insane. Almost 10 points per game that he's producing for teammates off of screen assists.
Unreal.
That puts him in the top 5-6 in the NBA in that category so far this season. He also is creating about 10 points per game this season off of his actual assists.
Yeah, passing.
So that's 20 points right there that he's creating for his teammates without actually putting the shot up. That's in addition to the 12 points a game that he's actually scoring.
Putting the ball through the hoop.
So you could deduce from that about 32 points per game that Isaiah Hartenstein is producing for this team. That's a max player.
Oh my gosh.
If you think about just like a score, a guy that's like that's all he does is score the basketball. They're getting a max contract in this league. And Isaiah Hartenstein is helping produce 32 points per game. So worth every penny that the Thunder has going to give to him over the course of this contract. And again, a guy that's still not anywhere close to being a finished product. He's had all these amazing experiences. And I love hearing him just off the cuff say stuff like, oh yeah, like those backdoor passes, that's something that I learned from Jokic. Or like, this screening angle, that's something that I learned, playing with Jalen Brunson and James Harden and Paul George, some of these guys that he's played with over the course of his career as he's made many different stops around the league. And so just really fascinating to see the way that the team has absorbed a personality and a player like Hartenstein that they haven't really had before. And even more impressively, the way that he has integrated into the team's system and culture in such a seamless way. This is a guy who was coming from New York City, coming from a very different franchise like the Knicks, and then a bunch of other stops along the way. And yet he is just one of the guys with this group.
I love that you put this in such tangible terms, because it's easy to look at Isaiah and be like, clearly he's very impactful, but it's like kind of ambiguous, like how he's able to impact the offensive end of the floor. However, I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I would extend it even further to say he's still got a lot of runway ahead of him, which is crazy to think about considering how impactful he's been already. But it's also the guys around him learning how they can benefit from playing with a guy like Isaiah Hartenstein that is really encouraging. So far, we've seen guys like Aaron Wiggins, an elite cutter without the ball. He is thriving with a guy like Isaiah Hartenstein, right? Who has got his head on a swivel, who's looking, who can stretch the floor, open things up. And Aaron has already been hit from Isaiah on a couple of those backdoor plays, right? A guy like Isaiah Joe, who's a knockdown shooter. I love the play when Isaiah Hartenstein throws the ball between his legs.
Oh, it's awesome.
On a screen to Isaiah Joe, who's cutting off of him, knocks it down. The Isaiah to Isaiah connection, you love to see it.
And we're seeing more wrinkles to that. I mean, even in the last 48 hours, if you look at those two games in Charlotte and then the one here last night, Isaiah Hartenstein is connecting with the teammates in different ways. Those backdoor bounce passes to Wiggins, where Hartenstein is, kind of at the nail, and that cut is not coming from the baseline. It's actually kind of coming from the angle. Yeah, that is such a difficult pass and angle. It's not easy.
And on film, if anybody else had that ball, Aaron didn't look open.
No.
he looked pretty covered up. But Isaiah is so good at this where he's like, you don't throw it to the guy. You throw it to where the guy's going to be. And you're reading the defender. The defender's not looking at me. So he doesn't know that I'm making this pass. And so I know it's going to get there.
And then there were two last night in the game that really stood out to me where, Memphis they're trying to fly around and they're trying to cover everything up. But, that drop off pass that Isaiah can do to Lou Dort, and Dort just comes kind of coming around back behind him, where the pass and the screen are kind of almost happening simultaneously. Very simple action, but just very different than anything that we've seen the Thunder do in the past. And the one that really stood out to me, and I mentioned this on our FanDuel Sports Network broadcast last night, these wide pin downs that he is able to set for a guy like Isaiah Joe. A lot of the movement threes that we've seen from Isaiah Joe in the previous years have been more like in transition, where he's sprinting and he's catching the ball where he's already facing the basket and he's squared up. This one that that Isaiah Joe is learning to take is where he's coming from underneath the basket and he's curling up on these wide pin downs and he's catching the ball kind of as it's coming to him from the top of the key, and he's curling and he's hitting at the same time. The space that Hartenstein can create on that shot,
huge,
and Isaiah Joe's ability to be able to curl and square his hips to the rim, for that to be added to the arsenal of ways that Isaiah Joe can get open is massive for the long-term development of this team, because you see it with old players like JJ Redick. Like the Clippers used to run that play for Redick all the time. But they had other counters to that as well, where if a team would try to top lock Redick, then they could he could go elsewhere. He could come up the middle of the floor. He'd do other things. That's why the Thunder is investing in some of these situations with Isaiah Joe right now, and why, some of the shooting percentages don't look the way that they have looked in previous years. But it's because the Thunder is working on some things so that come the times of the season that are really, really vital, the Thunder has different ways to deal with how they're being guarded. And that is critical. It's how the Thunder is learning some of the lessons from the playoffs and applying them so that they're ready for next season.
The Thunder's willing to take that one step back if it means taking 2 steps forward later. And so that's not something that's intimidating to them by any stretch. To take this even further, we haven't even talked about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and how Isaiah's ability to free up Shai has been really, really cool to see. And we talked to Hart after the Charlotte game. Yes, we talked to him after the Charlotte game. And I love his humility here, where he was like, I learned from, screening guys like Jalen Brunson, how to get the best angle. But sometimes with Shai, you just kind of have to move. just get out of his way. It's just reading the situation and doing whatever is necessary for the team. And Isaiah has such a good attitude about it and has been such a really good person to integrate into this rotation and in this roster. And it's been fun to watch so far.
What made you look?
Okay, we've kind of hinted at it already. The thing that made me look is the Thunder's road record this season. On top of the fact of the Thunder's record on the second night of back-to-backs. So the Thunder's clearly had a very heavy road schedule, but they are 13-3. It's the best record in the NBA on the road. And then on the second night of back-to-backs, they're 6-0. They haven't lost a back-to-back. The Thunder's had some really tough back-to-backs. Let's talk about one of my favorite ones, the Miami-Orlando back-to-back. Or was it Orlando-Miami?
Orlando-Miami, yeah.
So this was after the NBA Cup. The Thunder had just spent an eternity in Las Vegas. Time means nothing there. And then you fly all the way out. You lose 3 hours. That's a 4-hour flight from Las Vegas to Miami. You take on a Miami team that is clearly very good. They have a very good coach in Eric Spoelstra. You're going up against a team that is just really solid on both ends of the floor. And Coach Dagnall said, I like that we're playing Miami right after this, because you have to bring your A game. They're going to expose you one way or the other. And the Thunder walk away with a very gritty, hard-earned victory in Miami.
Yeah, playing the Heat is like, ironically, a massive bucket of cold water right to your face. Because it's just like from the very get-go, it's like, okay, nothing is coming easy tonight. And
exactly.
So a great wake-up call for the Thunder to have to be tested like that from the very get-go. How about the very first back-to-back of the season, which was the home opener for the Thunder? That's quite a way to begin your year, to have like that presented to you. You come off the road, off a very strange road trip to start the year, where you're in Denver and then you go to Chicago. Not sure that those two cities are usually paired in that order in a normal road trip. And you just deal with it, and you come home and you do what you got to do to win that game at home against Atlanta to start the home slate of the regular season. And it's been a remarkable response by this Thunder team every time that they've had a new challenge put in front of it, be it the road games, these extended road trips, these bizarre road trips like Toronto and New Orleans.
Weird.
Again, these things that you just don't typically see scheduled throughout the course of a year because those are a lot of miles in between in between those cities. And then on the back-to-backs too. I mean, this again speaks to the depth that we were discussing earlier, that like you can't win some of these games on the second night of back-to-backs without having really solid playable depth, NBA caliber rotation depth. We even saw it last night against Memphis. Shai came out of those first and third quarters early. After really only about 4 minutes. He came out, got some breathers, then went back in later in the quarter just to manage those minutes and manage his wind on the second night of a back-to-back. And the Thunder did a great job of just humming along like it normally would.
Every second night of a back-to-back, it's very interesting to see how OKC comes out of the gate. Sometimes they have like a bunch of punch like right off the get-go, like they're just leaning into it. And sometimes they have to kind of like ease themselves into it. And it's the second unit that brings a lot of energy and a lot of punch. And this is what makes the Thunder so different, I feel like, than the rest of the league, because they have so many tools that allow them to be successful regardless of their environment, regardless of the scenario or the schedule. And they have a really good mentality and an approach to these sort of things. They have been given every opportunity to make excuses, right? Like, oh, we're down, one of our all-star caliber players, and oh, we're down, Alex Caruso now, and all of these guys are just in and out, and the lineup's been fluctuating, and our schedule's been hard, and we've been on the road. Like, it could be really easy to do that, but every time somebody lobs up a question that would give them the opportunity to do that, the answer is, we're not the only team in the league that has a tough schedule.
Nobody's going to feel sorry for us. Yeah.
Do you think Orlando cares that we've been on a rough back-to-back and we're tired? No, they don't care.
No, they're trying to beat the brakes off of us.
Exactly. I think that's exactly what Shai said after Orlando. Is like, no, Orlando doesn't care. They want to beat the brakes off of us either way.
Yeah.
And so their approach, their mentality, but also the fact that they have a very deep roster of guys that they can trust to put out there and elevate the energy of the game, and the fact that their defense is so steady just allows them to be such a sustainably efficient team, no matter the circumstance. And that has been really cool to see so far this season.
No doubt about it.
Okay, our last section here. Bless your timeline. Things that have made us smile. I'll go first.
Okay, do it.
Because this was very recent. Yeah. This was in Charlotte, in North Carolina. So this was a very special 48 hours for our guy, Aaron Wiggins, right? North Carolina native, grew up in Greensboro, North Carolina. And his high school, while we were there, his high school retired his uniform. So he retired his uniform. He was inducted into his high school's Hall of Fame. The entire team was there. I mean, the coaching staff, like everybody was there to support Aaron, his whole family, obviously. Then the very next night, the Thunder takes on the Charlotte Hornets. The Thunder, without Cason Wallace, they were without Lou Dortz. They were down 2 of their starters. And Aaron Wiggins steps into the starting lineup and balls out, has 17 points in that game. And I just thought that was so special. That made me so happy for Aaron, who has had a little bit of an up and down season as he's, working to expand his game and really take steps forward in terms of his volume on offense. And he had himself a really nice breakout game at home in front of a massive crowd of friends and family. I mean, like post-game, when we were doing the post-game show, the entire arena is empty, but there's a whole section and Aaron's just like making his way, smiling, shaking hands, hugging people. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. All of Greensboro came down, I believe. And maybe half of Wesleyan Christian Academy, which is where Aaron went. Actually, a school that my high school played against in.
Oh, would you look at that?
Quite frequently.
Your jersey up in the rafters out there?
Oh, no. Nowhere close.
Hall of Fame, Nick.
I am not. I cannot even touch the ground that Paris Lawson and Aaron Wiggins walk on.
Oh, I couldn't touch the Aaron Wiggins ground either.
But no, just obviously so special. And the thing that Mark Daignault said after the Charlotte game, which is like, or maybe before the Charlotte game, was the way he calibrates the respect that Aaron Wiggins gets is just the way that his teammates respond to him. And, much like we saw with Chet Holmgren and Kenrich Williams and some of these other guys who have been honored over the course of time, the entire Thunder team drove went in the buses up the hour and a half to Wesleyan Christian Academy to go be there for this event for Aaron Wiggins. But it was also just how warmly they approached the whole thing as well, and how happy they were for Aaron. It wasn't this like moment of obligation. It was, we want to be there for this guy so much. So, I mean, again, back to the excuses thing. They could have said, geez, really, like we left on Christmas Day when we took off for this trip. We, wanted to just hang and rest because we got this back-to-back coming up.
Right.
No, all those guys went on that bus ride. They went up with him. They were there for him, and they loved the guy. And that is a great encapsulation of the way that this locker room is and how they are for each other.
Very tight bond, a whole lot of camaraderie, and these guys just genuinely like each other, love hanging around each other, and it shows up big time, both on and off the court. What blessed your timeline, Nick?
Well, every year the Thunder hosts, first of all, Holiday Assist, which really spans most of November and December, where the Thunder tries to give back around the holiday season that can be challenging for families. And it's something that the Thunder does throughout the year is, give back, but there's an extra concerted effort during this time period to really go above and beyond for, people in the community and families who are in need of help. This year, the Thunder did its annual Target shopping spree with a group called True Dads. And Jalen Williams, Jay Will, was there. He hadn't even really gotten back to playing yet when this event happened, but he just really lit up the whole Target store, which I tell you, it's a pretty big place to light up.
It's a big store,
But his smile and what he said, which is just, this event is the best every year. This is the one that the players really look forward to the most every year because they always get assigned a kid to go shopping all around the store with and really make their holiday wish come true. And the reason that this one kind of stood out to me was also just the group that they were working with, True Dads. It's a free program that teaches dads, healthy communication styles and helps them understand, good ways to parent and ways that are going to be deleterious to their kids over the course of time. And as a dad myself, I just feel like what a great opportunity for these dads to learn some of these skills so that they can reduce the stress on their lives, on their families' lives, and, help these kids, help foster a positive environment for kids who certainly, need that, particularly this time of year.
That event is always so cool. And I think this season in particular, there was a lot of buzz around Target when these guys were walking around. But to see, because the kids didn't know that they were going to be shopping with NBA players. They knew that they were going on a shopping spree. But then all of a sudden, Jay Will walks out, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Lou Dort. All these guys are walking out and pairing up with these kids, and their faces just light up. And you could tell that is going to be something these kids never forget. And just... I can only imagine for a guy like Jay Will to be able to have that level of an impact on a kid and a kid's father and just a family. Oh, it's got to be so special. Also, this is on the heels of a pretty special moment for Jay Will, too, when he steps into the game for the first time after being injured. This was a honorable mention for Bless Your Timeline for me, because when he stepped into the game, I mean, you would have thought the Thunder just hit a game-winning shot against the Boston Celtics in overtime. The way the crowd stood up and cheered for Jay Will to get into the game. In the second
quarter of a game against the Wizards.
Right. Right. And it was his season debut, and it just goes to show how impactful Jay Will is on and off the floor. I mean, he's just so beloved, and he's just such a charismatic guy who just lights everything up. And then talking about lighting things up, his first play, he knocks down a three.
A big boom.
Big boom.
and just the last thing that I'll touch on this is just once again goes to show the character of a guy like Jay Will and the value of just doing the right thing. For the whole first half of the season, Jay Will has been hurt, has not been able to play. And so he, has not been sulking. He's not been sitting there getting frustrated. He has been the number one loudest voice on that bench, hyping his teammates up, being there for his guys. And so there's a reason that the crowd and the team reacted the way that they reacted to him. People recognize when you're doing the right thing.
Totally.
And Jay Will is a perfect example of that.
Oh, that was a great one, Nick. That did bless our timelines. That's for sure. All right. Let's give you what's coming up next for the Thunder, because they have one more game of 2024, and it is a beloved tradition here in Oklahoma City. New Year's Eve here inside of Paycom Center, the Thunder taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves, another strong opponent from the Western Conference. How about this, Nick? The Thunder 12-4 on New Year's Eve.
That's pretty good.
That's solid. Good. That is pretty solid.
Ringing in the new year right.
I know, right? Yeah. And I've been a part of, this is going to be my 6th New Year's Eve game for Oklahoma City. these are fun. These are really cool. You've been a part of a lot more than I have, but the ones that I've been a part of have been really cool.
It's great. It's a really, I mean, the arena is already festive for being in kind of the holiday spirit, but it kind of goes to another level on this night. And so it's a great way to be with, your Thunder family.
Yep.
And I think I view sports like that sometimes, the way that your team becomes a little extension of your family. You either come to the arena and you see them and you see the people that sit next to you in the stands, and those become some people that you just have this great camaraderie with. And then, when they're on the road and you watch them and you feel like they're in your living room for 2.5 hours every other night throughout the fall and winter and spring. And so it's a really special thing to have something like this, a tradition in OKC.
Yep. And here inside of Paycom Center. So make yourself down here, bring yourself down here and make some fun New Year's Eve plans with some Thunder basketball. That's fun. Can I add one more thing?
Sure.
This was also a honorable mention for, it was either like a made you look or a bless your timeline. But what is with the towel?
I don't know. You're gonna have to ask J-Dub. We gotta get J-Dub on the podcast and see what he says.
We need to know. We need to know because the evolution of the post-game interviews has now reached a point where it's so funny. But so for those who don't watch the post-game interviews with Nick, who does such an amazing job, the most professional human being I think we have on our FanDuel Sports Network. So now we've gotten to a point where J-Dub and J-Will, I think, or maybe it's just J-Dub who started it. Nick is asking his interview questions, and J-Dub just puts a towel on the shoulders of Nick Gallo. You have been working hard all game long. You do deserve it.
Look, I'm laying it all on the line out there. Yeah.
J-Dub just recognizing it. But then last night against the Grizzlies, it took a step further, and J-Dub just started waving it like he was a cape, and Nick was Superman flying through the air. And Isaiah Hartenstein even helped him out and just kind of held it still.
Like, hold it down and make sure it had plenty of leverage to get up and down.
I had to bring that up because that has been a very, very fun thing for me to see.
Just a great reminder. Tune into the games. They're so much fun. These guys, I mean, it's such a wonderful window into their personality, who they are as human beings, the way that they treat each other, the way that they treat us who are around the team. It's just so remarkable, and it's such a wonderful view into who they are.
So special and so fun. And you have a chance to watch this team on New Year's Eve as they take on the Minnesota Timberwolves. Be sure to tune in. Until then, that wraps us up for 2024. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Thank you so much to our producer, Matt Bishop. And until next time, Thunder up and Happy New Year.